Thanks everyone for joining. As I said, for people who've just joined, Dale Cheeseman here, now Intelligence Group, Senior Advisory Solution Consultant. My responsibilities in the organization in the pre-sales world is I'm the specialist in the Now Intelligence Group, and we're responsible for performance analytics, virtual agent, predictive intelligence, process optimization, and the AI search. So what we want to focus on here today is actually the natural language itself. Nothing to do, well, something to do with the virtual agent, but we want to sort of focus primarily on the NLU because I think there's a lot of documentation out there in the virtual agent, and there's a lot of documentation out there in relation to the NLU, but some people are more focused on the VA, getting that front end piece working, but they sort of forget that there's sort of work to be done in the back end in the NLU. So I just wanted to sort of focus in on that. So there is a lot of material out there on, you know, best practice of the NLU and multi-language support in the NLU. This is more of a high level introduction to the NLU, but we will be going under the hood. So I hope you enjoy this. So first slide, we always place this up. This is our safe harbor slide. And this is just in the interest of protecting yourselves and us, that, you know, there may be comments, statements made in this session where we could mention forward-looking statements into the future, into forward releases. So we always sort of put this up to say, please don't plan your deployment based on our roadmap, as things can change and slip. So with that, moving through, bit of information about myself. I need to update this slide. I need to add another year on. So my name's Dale, as I said, come from a background of working in a service desk from the bottom, and I've worked all the way through. So I've worked at Siemens, I've worked at AstraZeneca, I've worked at IBM, I've worked at Match, which is FIFA. I've done various roles from first line all the way through to ops director. And then I joined in the consulting world, was with some of our competitors as delivery consultant until I found my place at the ServiceNow family. And I've been here now 4 years on the 1st of July. So really happy here and great company, great product. So my day-to-day job, as I said, is in the pre-sale work, supporting the SCs and the account execs, POCs, demos, but more in depth on the technologies there on the left-hand side. Also responsible for the Chain of Game workshops, which has been a global success, workshops which help you understand performance analytics, virtual agent, predictive intelligence, and also helping our customers identify automation potentials in the clustering analysis workshop. So this is what I do during my day. And I always love doing these for the team because it's a great way of putting our messaging out there and for us to sort of get the bigger message out there about some of our products. So this is a live on ServiceNow. Join us for future webinars and meetups on upgrades, ITSM, HRSD, ITAM, and much, much more. Learn more using the link in the chat. So that's the marketing stuff out of the way. So please stay on mute. Obviously, I don't mind people asking questions, but we sort of like to leave the questions to the end because I factor in time for that. But if you do have a burning question, you know, please use the Q&A feature to ask the question. I'll try and answer most of them during the session. If not, I'll follow up on them. When you come off mute, please feel free to introduce yourself when asking a question. We want to know, we'd love to know who you are, where you're from, what it is you're doing. The session will be recorded and shared on the ServiceNow community forum after the session. And after the session ends, you'll be prompted out to fill out a short survey. This is where we appreciate your feedback, where we can improve, you know, maybe we can enhance and basically grow this particular webinar. This is the first time we've done this particular webinar, so hopefully we've got it right, but if not, please feel free to feedback. Now, as I said, my day-to-day role is I look and get involved with a lot of customers who are starting their journey, and their journey into what we refer to as the virtual agent NLU, which is actually what we now refer to as the hyper-automation world. And some of the challenges that are faced with a lot of customers is, well, where do I start with the NLU? Or how do I make my VA more intelligent than just a standard And I don't like to use the word chatbot because chat is indicative to a customer that it's a bot that's going to ask loads of questions. I actually want it to be smarter than that. I want it to be able to skip questions and actually figure things out. So the NLU is actually behind the scenes doing things for you in that world. How do I set this thing up? You know, getting started with the NLU, you know, it can be kind of overwhelming, but actually I'm going to give you a really introduction level of this, understanding where to get going and then grow your deployment after that. Then you've got the best practice, you know, on the NLU. What should I do to keep my NLU clean? Again, there are pitfalls and mistakes that customers fall into, and hopefully I'm going to sort of outline some of these sort of things to watch out for. And as I said, there are other videos and contents available where we talk about, you know, refining, fine-tuning your NLU. But there's some new features that have now released in San Diego, and further plugins that have released that are actually help doing things like batch testing and collision testing. So we're going to go through some of this as well. So we've got a lot to get through. Now I'm going to put this slide up because this, as I mentioned before, is the hyper-automation world. And for anybody who hasn't heard of hyper-automation, you're going to start hearing this more and more as we go through the year. Hyper-automation is our strategy, our 4 pillars of success in the discover, automate, apply AI, and optimize world, where in each of those pillars, we look at the different parts of the Now Intelligence products, where we start to understand the customer wanting to mine data to find their process issues, looking at utilizing our automation hub to where we can automate procedures that historically we could only do if there was an API. Now we can do it by using the automation RPA hub to be able to do that and grow that faster. Looking at the virtual agent and the predictive intelligence, you're in this webinar is all aimed in the AI, the apply AI area. But there's a whole host of things that we've got, and we've got a whole showcase coming up and recorded content and live webinars launching this month on hyper-automation. So just to let you know, if you start to hear the words hyper-automation in the ServiceNow world, this is where we're trying to automate as much as we can, as fast as we can, for you to get the benefits in that. Okay, so when we talk about the bot, we're going to talk about the high level of the bot straight away, because ultimately, when you're looking at a virtual agent, there's many ways you can interact with the bot. And on the left-hand side, you can see text message, WhatsApp, via the mobile. You can use Slack, Teams, Workplace, Messenger. That's great. But understanding the flow, all this great stuff you see in the middle here, you know, it can be virtual agent can understand the user profile, can understand outages, cases, asset, knowledge base, internal and external integration, so augment data, routing to the best agent. Brilliant. But how does the customer get there? So when they open up Microsoft Teams, for example, and they say, I need a new laptop, okay, how does the bot know what the conversation is? So, you know, many releases ago, pre-New York, we had a bot that launched in London, and the bot was what's called a keyword search bot. In other words, all the bot knew was keywords to trigger a conversation. And that's relevant in this flow here, because if we talk about prior to New York, before our NLU came on board, and what you've got to understand is a conversation in VA has a start and an end, okay? When the virtual agent, when the customer types an utterance in, it basically says, I need a new laptop, for example, or I need to update my profile. That will use what's called the topic discovery to find the most relevant conversation. And that is built up from having an NLU model with intents and then utterances contained within the intents. But then if we look at this dialogue flow, and this exists even today, when a conversation starts, it has a flow of points from start to end, and it has to follow that flow. It cannot deviate. So if, for example, this was talking about, I want to update my email address. So customers comes along and says, I want to update my email, okay? It will start the conversation off, and it will basically say, okay, what do you want to update? Well, I want to update my email. Okay, what is the new email? The new email is this. Okay, we're done. So this would be driven by a keyword search. So when the NLU come along in New York, and we've enhanced that so much now, is if a customer now says, I want to update my email to john@sn.com. If we think about this flow, when the first question was, what do you want to update? Do you want to update your, and it could say, do you want to update your email address, your phone number, your secondary email address? You would basically say, okay, well, I don't need to ask that anymore because you've actually told me what you want to update. So this is where it could start to skip the question. So I don't need to ask that. And then the next one is basically, and I want to update my email to john@sn.com. Well, here, the process could have been, what's the new email address? Well, guess what? I don't have to ask that anymore. So I can skip that. So it's understanding that the NLU will find the relevant conversation, but as well as that, it will also help you make the conversation run smoother and basically be able to skip questions. And the old adage one in here is, I always joke about this, but when you're creating a ticket, sometimes a virtual agent will say, how urgent is the ticket? Well, guess what people are going to put? I'm going to give you the options of high, medium, or low. Well, you might as well just default that to high, because high percentage of customers are just going to hit high because it's important to them. But if they said something in the utterance like, my machine is on fire and I need a replacement today, based on the words, let's say fire and today, it might say, well, I don't need to ask that question because the machine's on fire. So I don't need to ask, is it high, medium, or low, because it's high. So I can skip that question. So that's what is called intent recognition. So NLU drives the topic discovery to find the conversation, and it also basically finds the intent. So if you look at these short clips while I'm talking you through, this is to speed this webinar up, is that if you see here, I want to update, it says here, my profile. Okay, that's all I'm going to type. Topic discovery will initiate and come back and find the relevant conversation. So here you go. I want to update my email. So topic discovery's found it, and we're stepping through. And the customer's having to type in, I want to update my email. I'm having to type in what my email address is, and then I'll arrive at that conversation. Now let's run the same conversation again with a customer with an NLU enabled utterances, intent recognition. So here, when we run it here, watch what the customer says. I want to update my email to nabil@sn.com. So the first prompting originally was, what do you want to update? Well, now, as you can see here, I've updated your email. So very simple, just to give you a high level understanding, is that based off the same conversation being used, the intent recognition understands the concept of the word email. So I don't need to ask, what do you want to update? And also I put in my email address. Therefore, I don't have to ask the customer. So that's what this is all about. And on top of that, you've also got to think about conversation switching. Now, conversation switching has been around for a while, but the NLU is there as well. The topic discovery is doing this. So here I want to update my profile. And again, this is a crazy scenario here I'm putting. Okay, actually, I don't want to update my profile right now. Sorry, I want to order a laptop. So totally different conversation. So the topic discovery realizes that actually I have a better conversation based off what that customer's just said. So I've started one conversation and realized actually there's a better conversation. And in enhancements we've made since, we've actually also introduced the point of, before I switch a conversation, do you want me to ask the customer, am I okay to switch? And it's just an option. But this is the high level understanding of what these are. So hopefully that makes sense. So think about the NLU and the topic designer. So you've got your topic design on the right-hand side where you're building your conversations, the VA. And on the left-hand side, you've actually got what's called the NLU, where you're building your intents and your utterances. And in the San Diego release, we've actually made it even easier for everybody because we've actually introduced the guided workflows. So we've actually streamlined our model creation process. We've introduced some new functionalities. And I think for me, what's been a big jump in San Diego as well is the ability to import data from a CSV. I have many customers who said, you know what, I've already got an NLU and I want to bring it into the platform. So I've got, 10,000 utterances across multiple intents in my other instance. Well, actually, I can import that data in now. So I'm not losing anything I already have. We're also using intents for pre-built models to create new models. So we've enhanced that with the model builder. We've also brought in the way of managing the phases. So to step you through, how you build your model, how you test your model, how you publish the model. And also, as well as that here, you can actually see there is a conflict review and a batch testing are integrated as well. So we've enhanced that in the San Diego release also. And the NLU workbench, again, allows a person to model and author and provide feedback on the intent. So as you can see here on the right-hand side, I've been training my model. I've tested the model. It's giving my prediction, but then it says provide feedback to improve this prediction. It's correct. If no intents in this model match the utterance, if you say its correct intent should be, because it's not found the right one, if by selecting the right one that you expected it to find, it then starts to train that model and learn, what the information is. I'm just checking the Q&A. Is the NLU experience is the same with the third-party primary chatbot? Well, that's a question I've just come through here. I'll just answer that while we're here. So it says, is the NLU experience is the same with the third-party primary chatbot like Microsoft? So if you're talking about, you want to use the ServiceNow virtual agent, but you want to plug in, for example, Microsoft Luis, what you would actually have is that your NLU would be managed in Microsoft Luis. And what you're doing is that your virtual agent just calls that integration into that NLU. So the NLU wouldn't reside in our platform. It would stay reside in the actual Microsoft Luis platform. So hopefully that's what you're getting at there. All right, so just moving through, just conscious of getting through everything. So I've got the slides out the way, and this is what you'll all be pleased to see, is demo. Let's get to an actual demo. So what I'm going to do is I'm very cheekily going to stop sharing for a second, and I'm going to reshare on my other screen here. So hopefully you can all see my screen. And I've been a bit funny with this one. I'm opening up my workspace, my service portal, and I'm actually going to say to my virtual agent, you know what is an NLU? So what is a NLU? Okay, so you'd like to know help with what is an NLU, right? Yes, I do. I want to know what the NLU is. So here it says, hello, Dale. So you want to know about the NLU? Well, here are a few details. Natural language understanding is a branch of AI that uses computer software to understand input in the form of sentences. So this is what I've already spoke about. Do you want to know more? Yes, please. So it also starts taking me through, I hear you're asking, how does natural language understanding actually work? Well, as I've already talked about, it analyzes the data in our algorithm training models to basically understand what the customer is asking for, translate that and provide an utterance. And as you can see here, I've also got a quick video for you. So just a jokey thing is that I built this virtual agent conversation, took me about 10 minutes to build, and it was just taking text. But the point of it is, this whole point was all about, I just typed in, what is a NLU? Now, if I had a bot that doesn't have an NLU, I would have to do a load of work in the keyword search, and I could get multiple different conversations showing where this NLU or what is present and so on. So what I've done here, I basically built a model with some utterances and matched it to an intent. And then it's just following that conversation. So it's just a bit of fun. So in the virtual agent, here is the actual conversation. Now, I'm not spending any time in the V8 at all. All I want to show you here is that this was the conversation, and here under the NLU is the NLU that I created. And here you will see it's got, I think I've put about 10 utterances in there, different ways I can ask for the conversation. So here you can see, what is natural language? Where can I find an NLU? Show me an NLU. What is an NLU? So this is, if you think about this, this is how your customers may ask for things. And I'm going to give you a little cheat of how you can find out very quickly how your customers are asking for things, even if you don't have an NLU yet. There's a little trick you can do. So in here, whilst I've got this, how does it know it's connected? In the properties of the virtual agent, I've told it here, this is important. It's looking at this NLU model, and it's here, and it's using this intent. So that is why when I click on the NLU intent, it's showing me the actual intent, which is called what is an NLU. That's why it's showing me this NLU, okay? Now, to actually look at the NLU, there's a couple of ways of doing it. So there is this whole conversational interfaces tab. There's a San Diego, and you look at this, it shows me integrate the bot with a portal, edit your bot's look and feel, set up greetings and so on. If I go to chat settings here, it takes me into the chat setting option, so I can look at my branding and my chat client, my channels and so on. But if I go to my virtual agent here, you'll see I've got topic recommendations, deflection metrics, natural language. Now, if you're not on San Diego, you will just go into your settings and switch on NLU. In San Diego now, you have this conversational interfaces. And here you can see that my NLU is switched on. If I click on the view settings, it tells me that my NLU provider is ServiceNow. For anybody who asked about other integrations, if I had the other integrations, I do have IBM Watson and I do have Microsoft Louise as different engines to showcase. But as you can see, if I wanted to use my IBM Watson script as an NLU, I can just change. But you can only have one provider. So if you decide to go with Louise for IT, you couldn't have the virtual agent service in Microsoft Louise and also using our NLU for HR, for example. Now here you can see a little slider bar, ask user if topic V is correct. So that's when I started my conversation, it then confirmed, is that what I'm interested in? And this is the little slider for if, ask the user if the topic is switched. I mean, when I talked about conversation switching, is this what we want to do? You can also see here my supported NLU languages. Now, as you can see here, I've got a little filter on, make sure I've got nothing. So I've just got language code is here, and I can take those filters out. I don't need. I'll leave them in for now, it's fine. So here, what you've got is, I've only got English. In this particular instance, I only have the English model. For every translation pack I enable, it will automatically appear in here, where I can enable them or disable them. So in the virtual agent itself, as I said, this is where we're focusing on today. And the one thing I want to see here, see all your NLU models in one place. Go to the NLU workbench. So I can open up the workbench here. And if you just in your example in here, if you're in already here, you can just type in models and it will take you. But here you can see I'm in my NLU workbench. So a couple of options you've got: use a pre-built model, import data from a CSV, start from blank. Now, if we start from blank, first let's fill out some details. So here I'm going to call this test webinar just so I can delete it when I'm finished. So this is the test webinar, it's the NLU model's name. And what is the primary language? So here you can see I'm going for English, but as you can see, I can build it in different languages, but my primary for me is English. As well as that, I'm creating this for what? virtual agent or search. This is to enhance the AI search functionality as well. But that's the virtual agent, and I'm going to click next. So it now says view your model. So I'm going to just cancel that there. So here, it basically tells me this model has no content. So what it is doing is it's built this test webinar modeling page where it shows me my intents, my entities. But hold on a minute, I haven't got any yet. I've not done anything in this model. Why am I seeing 9 entities? Well, if I click that, what this is showing me is my platform enabled here. So as you can see, these are system type. These ones we give you out of the box. So this is a system entity for software, location, date, number. I'll come back to these in a second. But in my intent section here, I've got the ability to create a new intent. So here, I'm going to call this something on the lines of MS Teams issue. And I'm going to click add intent. So there is my intent. So there you can see, there is my intent. This is my model. So as you can see here, there's my model. There's my intent. You can see I've now got 1 intent. Now it does tell you you need 1 more intent. Sorry, this 1 intent needs more utterances. So if I click back in here, this is my enablement. This is where I'm placing my utterances. So here I can say, I have Teams issue, MS Teams problem, unable to access Teams. Teams is not working, getting error. Getting error in Teams, unable to, I'll do too many more, unable to sync Teams. So I've now got a few, but you'll notice there's a couple of lines under these where it says Teams. What's that doing? So if I click on that, it's basically, well, what do you mean? Is it a software? Is it software communication tool? Or do I want to provide my own personal synonym, your company's synonym? So what you've got here is I'm going to say this is a software communication tool. Confirm. So you see, it's done it for every single one of these. So again, one of them could be, the way I've wrote it, why is it doing it for all of them? Well, you can see it's just refreshed. Here, I could say it could be something else, because you could have MS Teams, or you could have, I'm having a Teams problem. That could be a HR issue. So you could say, provide a synonym and say HR. But for this, I'm going to say, for all these, it's a Teams issue. Okay. So at this point, can I train the model? So it says it's never been trained. I click train. So it will give you an error. Too few unique intent found. So what that's telling me is, before I can publish this small model, it's telling me I haven't got enough intents. So I need some more in here. Now I can, for the speed of time and for today, I'm going to click import intents. So this is where I can import. Now, whenever you get ITSM or CSM or HR, we give you what's called out-of-the-box VA conversations. We give you out-of-the-box NLU models. But these are all in a read-only state. You can do nothing with them. So, but what I want to do is I can say, well, actually, the ITSM one has got some in there that I do want, but I want to add more conversations to them. So here I select my ITSM conversations, and I want to take Open IT ticket. I want to get guest Wi-Fi access. I want email set up and create problem. So I'm going to import them. So by importing now, what I can now do is bring those in to this model. So they're now in there. But as you can see, my Teams issue says it still needs utterances. So do I have enough? So I'm going to say Teams broke. Teams won't start. So I'll do that. Okay. So I'm going to try and train the model again now. So train. So this can take a little time but it's only a small model, so it shouldn't take too long. So what's actually happening now is it's sending this to the training server with the utterances and so on. So at the moment, all it's doing, it's learning those utterances against that particular intent. So it's now trained the model. So I can say, I want to try the model. So if I say, let's if I say laptop issue. So I press go. Now what it's telling me here is you've got this create problem. Now where's that coming from? So remember in my model itself, in my model, which is here, I've got that problem. So it's looking at everything that's in this model. So if I try the model again, so if I say laptop issue, telling me that create problem, okay, with a 61%. So in other words, what it's saying to me is, based off what you've said, with a 61% certainty, I think the intent is create problem. Now, there is one thing that always gets overlooked here. When you actually go back to your test model, let me just move these out of the way. When you go into the phases, you actually have these three little dots. And at the beginning of when you first created it, it didn't show it. But if I go into the actual settings of here, there's what I named it. There's the language. That's what it's created for. But it didn't show this, the confidence threshold. So the confidence threshold here is basically talking about how sure do you want to be. So if it's 60%, when I say try model and I say laptop issue, it's 61%. So what does that mean? Well, it means that I will show this to the customer because I'm passing the confidence threshold. So here I could say show other predictions. So the other predictions, guess Wi-Fi access, open IT ticket. Well, here's the problem, because theoretically, I really want that one right up there. So in other words, what I'm seeing here is this one is presenting as a viable solution to present, and this one isn't. So in my intent, I would go into open IT ticket. Oops, cancel that. Open IT ticket, so it leave in here, and I would say, okay, laptop issues on machine, noisy, say issue on laptop speaker, let's say something like laptop not booting. So that, so I always remember this. I actually, if you could see my office now, I have a sticker under my monitor that says, don't forget to publish. Because when you have to train the model every time you're doing anything, you're adding something to it. Because you could sit here working away and what you'll realize is you go, why is it not working? Why am I still not seeing that conversation getting a more higher utterance confidence level? Because you've not trained it. Once you've trained it, then you can try the model, then it would encapsulate that. So if I say try model now and I say laptop issues. So again, if I, okay, so I'm getting that model, okay? So it's not giving me anything else. So if I go back to my main model, say try model here. So it's still, so open IT ticket, you can see now, is shot right up. So in other words, the top prediction is open IT ticket at 88%. That problem one has gone away because it knows there's a higher percentage one in the model that's better. Okay. So once you've done all of this, you then say, okay, well, now I've got my model, very basic at the moment, publish the model. I can click view phase and I could say here, when you publish your model, you make it available in the use for search or virtual agent. Review your model's projected performance result to see how it's predicting intent. Then optimize the model to reduce the percentage of incorrect prediction. So you actually have this button here where you can click run optimization. And I'm not going to do it now because it takes a while, but it'll actually look at your model and it'll basically give you information of how viable or where you need to improve on your utterances or where it may be a clash. But for now, I'm just going to click publish the model. Okay, so it now says your model has now been published. So I click got it. So it's now telling me you've successfully published the model. Where is that then seen? So this is called test webinar. I'm not going to change anything here. But if I just go into my virtual agent as an example, so if I go into virtual agent here, oh, that's item, don't want to go there. Just go up here. So if I go to my designer, and I'll go to my NLU conversation because I can just break that. When I go to my properties here, you'll see, if I load down here, you'll see I've got, there's my test webinar one. And now it'll say, okay, well, what intent do you want? So there are my intents now, okay? So that's how you basically build a very simplistic model, okay? So what happens then? And this is where it starts getting a little bit more complicated. So back to the model itself, you see, you remember these intents. So I'm going to go back into my intent here. And I'm going to go into Open IT Ticket. And this is very simple for me here. You'll see that in the Open IT Ticket, there is an associated entity. What is that? This is urgency. Okay, so if I come down here, you'll see that this word is highlighted. But I'm going to keep this a bit funny. I'm going to say my laptop is now on fire. Now, imagine the conversational flow where if you're opening a ticket and it basically says, okay, Dale, what's the urgency of your ticket? Is it high, medium, or low? Like I said before, my machine is on fire. So it's not a low priority because if it's low and it's 4 hours, I'll just have a desk full of burnt plastic by the time 4 hours have gone by. So you might want the bot to sort of be able to answer that. So what it'll do is, first thing I'm going to do, I've got my little underline under laptop. I'm basically going to say, yeah, this is a computer. So I'm putting the synonym. Now, here, I've got the word fire. So what I want to do is, I want to go to a mapped entity that I've built, and I'm going to click urgency, and I'm going to select high. So what have I just done now? I've basically just said, yeah, okay. There's an urgent here. So I'm just going to retrain the model very, very quickly. And I'm going to just show you what this now does in your models. Then I'm going to go into the virtual agent and show you how you map that question to an entity recognition. So to skip the question. So I'm going to go back. I'm going to say try model. I'm going to say laptop. I'm going to be a bit cruder than that. Laptop on fire. Now, there's an, I've done this very quickly so you can see. So, Open IT Ticket. Remember before when I was talking about opening an issue and I put laptop issues, it came up when I inserted a couple of utterances, it pushed it up to 88%. Now, I've done pretty much the same, but now instead of putting laptop issue, I put laptop on fire. So now it's basically telling me the intent is actually at 90%. And underneath it, it's basically saying, because I know there is an entity for hardware, okay? And it's a laptop as the value. And then it's got, there is an entity, urgency, against high value. So what that's basically showing me now is that that is the top prediction. Now, what it's telling me below is, remember, why is it showing me this twice? Because I've not published the model. I've published it previously, and it's showing me my published model is confidence is 60% threshold, and my Open IT Ticket is 83%, and I've got hardware value, okay? In this model where all I did was typed in my laptop is on fire and mapped the fire to an entity recognition of urgency, it's now basically telling me, hey, you know, if you publish this model, my confidence is going to grow and I've actually got some mappings against entity values. Brilliant. So what I'm going to do now is very quickly, I'm going to say, you know what? I'm going to publish that model. So view phase, publish model. Model has been trained, model has been published. So now that is now published. Now, that entity recognition, where does that reside? So what I'm going to do is, very quickly, I'm just going to leave here. I'm going to go to open IT ticket, which is this one. You'll notice it's a read-only conversation. Remember what I said about read-only ones? Now, I want to play in here. So I think what I want to do is, let's say, for example, this is just a bit of a VA thing. You want this VA conversation, but you want to edit it. Well, very simple. I'm just going to click duplicate. And I'm just going to call this IT open ticket. I'm going to call this DC for me. Click save. Now it will create a duplicate of that conversation, but you'll now see that the flow is editable. Now, what you'll see down here, this is the flow of conversation. Now, I'm not going to get into the design of the conversation, but in essence, what's happening here is what's the issue, okay, add comments and so on. But it gets to a point in the conversation where it says here, how urgent is it? Okay, here. Now, this is where you start to think about entity recognition. If I don't want to ask the customer that question based off utterances they place in their conversation, if I say select an entity, if I scroll down, I should, with any luck, find urgency. And I'm going to say enable NLU to switch. No, it's not that one. So this one here enables switching topics as predicted by NLU based on other utterances. No, this one here. So I've enabled it. So in other words, just by selecting that word urgency, if a customer comes along and says something like, my monitor, there's smoke coming out of it and I think it may be on fire. If it logs this particular conversation and it gets to that question point and they've said the word fire in the utterance, I don't need to ask them how urgent it is because I've got a mapping in my NLU that basically says, if they say the word fire, I'm going to skip that. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So what we've covered this morning or this afternoon or this evening, where you are in the country, in the world, is we've talked about an NLU, what the NLU is, the workbench, the studio, and so on. We've talked about what an intent is, what an entity is. Okay, so we've talked about all of that. We've also gone through the manage the model, test your model, and publish the model. So hopefully you've got a very high level viewpoint of what the NLU does, how I build one, how I marry it. There are other content and webinars out there where we talk about fine-tuning an NLU, working an NLU in a multi-language environment, and so on. But the one thing I just want to touch on before I hand back, well, where I open up the floor for questions, is I said right at the beginning, there's a way of finding out how your customers ask for things. Well, there's a little plugin you can switch on, and some of you may already have heard of it. It's called Intent Discovery. Now, Intent Discovery is a really useful little tool. There's two ways you can do it, and I've actually picked one of my instances that I've not got it switched on. So with the power of here, I'm going to log into my other instance. So very, very quickly. So there's two ways that we can do this. We can do this via intent discovery, or we can also use what's called predictive intelligence clustering. Now, I'm going to touch on these very, very quickly, because if you want to know how your customers are asking for things, that helps you build your NLU model. Okay, so in intent discovery, I'm just waiting for my page to load. In intent discovery, it's a way of you very, very quickly pointing at your historical records, and it's looking at, for example, short description, and it shows you against our taxonomy where they fit. So if I show you in this example, if I go intent discovery here, So once I look at this, it shows you how it's done. So if we look at this was. So what this is doing, just at a high level, it's basically showing me when it loads how many virtual agent potentials I have. But what's important for me is this is our taxonomy. These are the intents that we use in our NLU for intent discovery. And what it's showing me here is there is, under the email troubleshooting, I have 5,233 calls, which makes up 5.8% of my entire model records. When I look down here, you can see how they were asked for, what my average resolution time was, what the assignment groups were. But here, it shows me the top description. The short description that it based it on was, in the short description, 12% of them were coming in saying Outlook email issue. I've got 2.5% were saying this, or troubleshooting to get Oregon mail server. I can see more, and it starts to show me how they're asking things. So I can actually say add to model. So I could actually say select my model, and I could put it into a model and get my utterances that way. So that's one way of doing it, finding out how your customers are asking for things. The other way is a bit long-winded, but it's called the clustering framework, part of predictive intelligence, where I can basically run a cluster and in there find how my customers are logging calls, how they're coming in via email, via the system. I can see them here that against, for example, this one, I can see that this isn't short description, that it was basically saying this. So I can find ways of doing it. So that's what I want to do. And the other thing I just want to call out here, dependent on what release you're on, we have actually just issued a little plugin update. And in the plugin update, you can also do things where, if I just go to intent analytics, not that one, sorry. Let me just call it up. Advanced, is it advanced NLU? Oh, sorry. Advanced NLU. So under the NLU workbench, there's a plugin, and I've actually saved it already on here. It's one of these, this one. In the store, there is this new NLU workbench advanced features. When you install this particular plugin, it actually gives you batch testing, conflict review. So you can start to basically see here, and again, this is an example. I've got here under my ITSM virtual agent model, when I click on this, it's telling me I've got 16 moderate issues. So here we found overlapping utterances in these two intents. So critical, can I remove user from distribution list under this one, but it also exists under this one. So it's basically saying, you know what, you've got too many models here with similar utterances. If they're all published, it's going to start getting confusing. You've also got this option of batch testing, which again, there is information on that. And then you've also got this expert feedback loop. And I'm going to say, install the plugin, check out the documentation here to resolve data availability. There is a more documented process on it. No problem. So if we're in the, let me go back. If we're in the NLU, we're in the models. So you'll see, is it this one I've got it in? Okay, there you go. So you see here, I've got, and this is an example, ITSM for virtual agent here. I've got English, French, and German. Okay. So as you can see, I've got English. If I click on that one, view phase, there are my there are my intents. And if I go into this one, there are my English utterances. If I go back home and I look at ITSM here for French, you'll see here I've got, again, I've got out of office. You'll see I've got French here. So if you've got multi-language, let me just go to this instance. If I go to virtual agent and go to a conversation, I should have covered this. I'll do it now. So if I go to Teams, it's one of my conversations I built in another instance. And this is probably going to be in the wrong scope. Yep. Let's go to the right scope. Yep. So in here now, when you look at my conversation here, when it loads, there's my NLU. Okay. And here is my languages. And under translation, the translations is the translation for the field in the designer. The NLU mapping is different. So here I can say I've got English. There's my English one. If I then say I want to do it for French, I then say here is my, I want to use ITSM French. And which one do you want to use? Let's say it's this one for now. Okay, so that's my NLU model 9 languages. So this one, so there's the 9 languages. The default is English. So there is the French one. So in essence, you would have to create multiple intents against the languages. So if you wanted to create an English model, create an English one, create a French one, but then what you do is against each individual conversation, you can see here that you just basically say, okay, I now want to add in a German one. Now, and you could add in another one as well. So you can see that it's doing it for German. So you do have to build the models multiple. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. So we've done that one, done that. Hello, how to translate? Oh yeah, we've just done that one. Is there any approval process for intent discovery to add into an NLU? Nope. If the admin has got permissions to intent discovery and they add it, they have to manually add it to the NLU, then you know it's done. But apart from that, there's no permissions to see. So even in sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I just had one more question. So how do we generally implement this? Like, do we train, test, and publish in each instance, or how the implementation looks, implementation plan for NLU?
So again, what you've got to look at is with your NLU, you've got to look at what virtual agent conversations we're launching, how many languages we're going to have to provide it for. So that dictates that if I've got 10 VA conversations, and I've got 3 business languages, then I would have to create 3 NLU intent, 3 models with the different languages and map them against that one conversation. That dictates how you would deploy. So building your conversations, building your models, your intents and your utterances in the relevant languages, and then mapping them to that potential that conversation.
So when we are migrating, all this will be captured in the update set. Is that?
I'm gonna have to. I'll come back to you on that one because there's a couple of intricacies that I have to be careful of. So I'll come back to you on that one.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
All right. So if we've got some questions still going, we'll collect them and I will answer them back. We'll get them back to you because we are running out of time. So if I've not answered your question, we will get to it. I sincerely hope you enjoyed the session and hopefully I'll see you soon. I'm just going to share my screen very, very quickly as the marketing team will shout at me if I don't. So I'm going to just share and just basically say thank you for joining us. We did the questions. Remember that we do have other webinars planned, meetups on upgrades, ITSM, HR, ITAM and more. With that, I say thank you. I hope you enjoyed today's session and I hope to see you again soon. Take care and thank you from ServiceNow.